Hey folks, I wanted to make you aware of something having to do with Star Trek Axanar, the fan film. And it has to do with Forbes.com. Forbes.com, there's a new piece up on Axanar promoting some of the perspectives that we've talked about on this channel and on other channels related to fan fiction, intellectual property, like the relationship of corporate IP ownership and fans and fan films and that sort of stuff. So I really want to point you to it, and it's really cool that I get to see this because it means that some of these ideas are kind of making their way into the mainstream. We no longer are going to have just strictly legal arguments for this. People can think a little bit outside the box about how these things should be managed and what's good for the brand, what's good for the universe that people really care about. So I will point it out to you. I will have a link in the description. It's written by Peter Descherny here, and he makes a point about, first talks about Axanar. If you don't know what Axanar is a Star Trek fan film that raised like $1 million, I want to say, on Kickstarter, and encountered some controversy from fans because the people who made Axanar weren't making the progress on it that people thought was adequate, but were also getting paid a salary to work on it. They were paying themselves a salary out of that $1 million, and it wasn't a large salary. It was basically a pittance if you live in LA, but people felt like that was profit. They were building their own studio. That can qualify as profit, and so fans were kind of upset about that, but also they ended up with a lawsuit from, I think, both CBS and Paramount. Like the rights for who makes what Star Trek is like split up right now. Viacom I think used to own the whole thing. Now it's CBS has TV rights. I think Paramount has movie rights. So anyway, they're suing the guys who are making Axanar for violation of copyright, violation of trademarks in particular. So trademarks have to do with like the things that are part of the universe, like the word Star Trek is a trademark. Vulcan is probably a trademark. Federation might be a trademark. Like I don't know if Enterprise is, but Enterprise might be a Star Trek. Like Spock might be. Like all these characters have a trademark associated with them, which means you can't just use them willy-nilly. And so that's going to be, probably that's legally in the court of CBS and Paramount. But what this article really talks about is some of the other things, like what's the good relationship? How does the Hollywood machine's kind of being challenged by a $1 million Kickstarter for something people really care about. How can they come out as winners in this? And the analogy he makes is to Easy Rider, which is a 1969 movie that was made on a really low budget and ended up making a bunch of money, and was basically an art house movie. And art house movies are not a thing anymore. Like art houses aren't a thing. There's still some around, I think, in various cities, but it's not what it used to be, where there were these movie theaters that specialized in showing like foreign movies and that kind of stuff. Art house flicks, and you might still hear the term for art house flicks. And that kind of changed their approach. Francis Ford Coppola ended up having like an art house studio. He mentions that in the article. And so all these things, he makes that comparison. And now we have a challenge to that in the form of like fan fiction, because the ability to produce high quality motion pictures and other content, including written content, has gone up with the increase in technology. So how do studios deal with that? And his idea is like, well, fan fiction, I've said this before, fan fiction is a net benefit for studios usually, because they don't have to spend any of their capital making it, promoting it. It promotes their brand, and they can also distance themselves from it by having it be unofficial. So it's usually a win-win when somebody makes a fan film. And in this case, maybe not, because the more hardcore Star Trek fans have not loved the last two Star Trek movies. I don't want to cast everybody with the same brush, but it's a really common thing. I'm not a big fan of the last two Star Trek movies, especially Into Darkness. But whatever, it's not, it's not, I don't think it's Gene Roddenberry's vision anymore. I don't know, I could talk about it, but Axanar would be more of like what I want to see, but there's a lot of kind of fishy business going on with the money that makes me uneasy about wanting to say like, yeah, let's go Axanar. But we'll see what comes out of it. The problem with this analogy he makes to Easy Rider in these art house films is that that was totally in the market, right? We had market forces encouraging Hollywood to do things differently. In the case of Axanar, what we have is not market forces. We have market forces saying make different Star Trek movies, and here's $1 million to do it. But we have a legal razor in the middle that's really cutting things to pieces. Hollywood can't or does not have to respond to those market forces in a way that will make them money. What Mr. DeSherney here suggests is that they, kind of lease out the IP, so to speak, and then they could both make money. He uses like Amazon has this thing. I'm trying to remember what it's called. But basically you can look at like fan fiction on Amazon, and the person who created the original story basically gets a big portion of that money, while the person who writes the fan fiction gets some of the money, so they kind of split the profits. And he's like, why can't we do this with movies? And I don't know, we probably could do that with movies. But there is that legal razor where, because of the way intellectual property law works in the United States, it's not something that CBS and Paramount have to do. They don't have to cut a deal with a fan fiction film. It might be in their benefit, but because there's that threat of force in there, it kind of pollutes the whole thing. So that's why I don't think the comparison to Easy Rider is a great one, because Easy Rider was created voluntarily, it was distributed voluntarily, it was successful due to voluntary interactions. In this case, it wouldn't really be voluntary interactions. The people who own the IP kind of hold the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, in that relationship, because they have the force of the law at their back if they choose to end it. So it's kind of a little more one-sided than what I'd like to see. But the ideas are out there, and they're really good, and I really encourage you to read it and give me your opinion below, and let me know what you think about it. I'm always interested to see where this is going to turn out. I really want Axanar to not be vaporware, but I mean, with all the legal challenges and stuff, it's hard to not see that as like the probable outcome. But who knows? Maybe we'll get something cool. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can visit my websites, davspress.com, davidvstewart.com, and have yourselves a great evening or day whenever you happen to be watching this.